significant consequences that do not apply to citizens, that do apply to non-citizens.
So if an undocumented immigrant is charged with a crime, what should they do and where do they get help? Well, we're going to find out right now because that's what we're going to Ask the Lawyer. Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com, and my guest is New York City Attorney Cory Forman. I want to remind you right off the top, if you'd like to ask Cory questions about your specific situation, all you have to do is head to AskTheLawyers.com. Click the button in the upper right-hand corner of the screen that says Ask a Lawyer, and it'll walk you right through the very simple process right there. Cory, nice to see you. Thank you for making some time to help us out today.
Same here. Thanks so much for having me.
So let's just start. We're talking about undocumented immigrants who have been charged with a crime. Should we assume that if they're convicted of a crime or charged, even just charged, are they going to be deported automatically? What happens there?
Well, no, I mean, there's a lot of misinformation out there. Some of it is intentional to put fear in people's minds. Some of it is just because it's such a complex area of law. Being charged with a crime, whether you're documented or undocumented, even if you're a lawful permanent resident, could have major effects on your ability to become legal if you're not already a legal resident, to apply for naturalization if you are, or can lead to deportation. It doesn't have to be. I mean, for the most part, being charged with a crime in and of itself is not going to subject someone to deportation. Now, it could put an undocumented individual on the radar who's already deportable for another reason, like being here without papers. It could lead to that for sure. But the first thing that you want to do if you're charged with a crime, like any person should do, is consult with a lawyer, but make sure that you consult with a lawyer that has the experience in not only criminal law, but in immigration law. There is significant, there are significant consequences that do not apply to citizens, that do apply to non-citizens, again, whether you're here lawfully or not. There are green card holders, I represent thousands of them, that have been charged with the most innocuous, simple of crimes that they didn't think was a big deal, and their lawyer told them was not a big deal, yet it landed them in deportation proceedings. Same thing with undocumented individuals that could otherwise be eligible for a form of relief. If they are put in deportation proceedings, could be foreclosed from applying for that relief because of their crime, the conviction. So it's essential that you really sit down, consult with a criminal attorney that has a specialty background in immigration that could navigate both avenues for you.
I want to get into that in just a second, but what about, permanent residents? Are there additional protections for them that not for the others?
Well, in terms of, a lawful permanent resident is going to have, more extensive rights in terms of burdens, but, the crime of it itself is going to, there are certain crimes that is going to make a lawful permanent resident deportable. There are some that a lawful permanent resident will be eligible to apply for relief from, but for instance, most controlled substance offenses, most drug offenses, including marijuana, will render even a lawful permanent resident deportable from the country. Now, because they're a lawful permanent resident, assuming they meet other eligibility requirements, they may be able to apply for a waiver or relief that wouldn't be available to someone who's not a lawful permanent resident. But there are many crimes, especially aggravated felonies, which is going to put even a lawful permanent resident out of luck. We represent many individuals here for 40 years, came here when they were infants as lawful permanent residents. They're convicted of a simple cocaine charge later in life. That renders them deportable, puts them in removal proceedings. Now, at the time they took the plea, they thought it was a simple fine, and their life would go on. And they thought that until the ICE comes knocking on their door. So you've got to be very careful. But even for lawful permanent residents, you have to be very, very careful in terms if you're charged with a crime. Even as a lawful permanent resident, or better known as a green card holder, you got to be very careful on how that situation is navigated. There are times where, you may you advise a non-citizen or even a lawful permanent resident to plead to something that under the criminal law may be considered more serious, but doesn't have the same immigration consequence that another offense would have.
That's why it's important to have somebody on your side who knows the difference. You mentioned, let's talk about crimigration. You practice what you call crimigration law. Explain what that is and what are the advantages for someone who may need your help?
Well, like I just said, if you're, I represent, non-citizens in the criminal world. A lot of it is post-conviction relief and appeals. People convicted of crimes that they pled guilty to, that they didn't think about, or they didn't know there would be a significant immigration consequence. And there is one. We'll try to get that case back into court by filing a motion to vacate the conviction. I'm very successful at that. Try to get that conviction vacated to cure that immigration problem. That is one area of the crimigration world. We do a lot of advising to criminal counsel who don't know this area of law, that really need the immigration expertise. But we'll work with criminal counsel in crafting pleas and coming up with alternative offenses that their client could plead guilty to. Although it's again, it's better to have someone that does everything at once. In the immigration context, in the immigration world, we will defend removability often by disputing that a certain criminal offense leads to a deportable offense under the immigration law. There's a lot of analysis that goes into that. There's a lot of defenses, legal arguments you can make as to why a certain crime is not a deportable or removable offense. So in the immigration context, we'll do a lot of defense on that end. So we really, again, in terms to answer your question, to go from the crimigration applies to just having that specific special knowledge in both areas of law. Right. So when they intersect, you could really help somebody.
You mentioned before some of the offenses that could cause trouble, and I mean, it makes sense that some of the felonies, but can this also be a problem for like minor crimes, like say traffic tickets, or even you said minor drug possessions? Those could also be a problem.
Minor drug possession, definitely. There's no such thing as minor drug possession in the world of immigration. Even if, the only exception is, very small amounts of marijuana. And that applies even today. So even if you live in a state where marijuana has been legalized, if there's a prior conviction before it was legal, or even, if you admit to marijuana use in certain circumstances, like when you're trying to get into the country, that's a major consequence. If you admit to marijuana use and you try to get into the country and that's found out, tough. You would need a waiver for that, and most people don't apply for that waiver. Traffic tickets, again, there are some that are more serious than others. Some states, even DWI comes under the vehicle and traffic law and not the criminal code, but that's obviously going to have a significant impact. But for the most part, minor speeding tickets are not an issue in and of themselves. Now, there are states, though, where where the local police will cooperate with the federal government. You're pulled over on a minor traffic offense and they run your immigration background, and it turns out that you're here unlawfully or there's something red flag that could lead to trouble. So again, it's not only the offense that you have to be careful about, it's what could that offense trigger? Could it put you on the radar? But yes, I think a lot of the media conversation and the national conversation and the news about immigration, non-citizens that commit crimes, it's always portrayed as serious, violent offenders are the ones that have to be weeded out. Right. But the fact is, some low-level, long ago, really nonsensical, minor stuff, from stealing deodorant not that I'm condoning that, but in a Walgreens or in a pharmacy shop, could lead to, being charged as someone who's committed a crime involving moral turpitude. So again, there's very little distinction between minor and major crimes in the world of immigration. It's very harsh.
At the very top, you mentioned that there's some misinformation put out purposely for intimidation and for fear reasons. Who would do that? Who would put that information out there?
Well, I think news sells, and I think the media, and I'm talking left, right, center. Fact is that it sells. It's a product that people buy and fear sells. So that's one. I think we all have realized that over the past year and a half, how much that could be addictive and detrimental. Mm-hmm. So that sells. I think certain government persuasions, political affiliations, try to put that out there. I think. In the last administration, that was a big tactic to dissuade people from applying. Again, a lot of the news was focused on the border and what was happening on the border, but there was a lot of purposeful obstacles being put in place to prevent people from applying for residency, applying for citizenship. So sometimes it's government sanctioned, unofficially so,
Right.
but it's just the reality.
Lots of really helpful information today, Cory. Thank you so much. I appreciate you making some time to answer our questions.
My pleasure.
That's going to do it.
Looking forward to coming back.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been New York City attorney Cory Forman. Remember, if you'd like to ask Cory questions about your specific situation, it's easy to do. Just go to askthelawyer.com. There's a button in the upper right-hand corner that says Ask a Lawyer. Click there, and you can ask your question. It doesn't cost anything to ask. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with Ask the Lawyer.